At my husband's funeral, I heard my daughter-in-law whisper, "Speed up the inheritance, I'm sending the old lady to a nursing home." Her words sliced through the organ music like glass through silk. I didn't turn around. I just stood there, gripping the edge of the pew until my knuckles went white. The scent of lilies was thick, suffocating. And somewhere behind me, a camera clicked, capturing grief that didn't belong to me. "I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end. And tell me where you're watching from, so I know how far the truth of this moment will travel." The church was beautiful that morning. The kind of beauty Henry would have loved. Stained glass glowed in colors he once said reminded him of our first house by the lake. Sunlight turning ordinary walls into something holy. But all I could see were masks. Pamela, my daughter-in-law, walked around in her black silk dress, her heels clicking like punctuation marks to a lie. Every tear she shed seemed rehearsed. Her hand clutching my son's arm just a second too tight, as if to remind everyone that she now stood where I used to belong. I sat at the far end of the front row. Not beside my son, but 2 seats away. A silent gap that said everything words couldn't. Someone had placed a small bouquet of lilies on the seat next to me. The widow's spot, they called it. How polite of them to mark my isolation with flowers. Henry would have hated this performance. He was a man of quiet decency. Never one for theatrics. He'd have rolled his eyes at the expensive casket, the scripted condolences, the hollow praise of people who hadn't visited him once during his illness. He would have leaned toward me and whispered, "Let's go home, Evie, these people don't mean a word." But he wasn't here. Just his photograph, framed in silver, looking far too calm for a man whose family had already begun dividing his world. When the priest spoke of love and legacy, I could feel Pamela's eyes on me. Not with pity, but with calculation. She didn't look at the casket. She looked at the envelope in my hands. The one Henry's lawyer had given me that morning. She thought it was the will. She thought she'd already won. I wanted to tell her how wrong she was. How Henry, even in death, had planned for this moment. But I didn't. I simply folded the envelope tighter and focused on the candles flickering beside the altar. Each flame bent toward me, as if Henry himself was still breathing there, quietly reminding me to stay calm. Pamela leaned close to my son again, pretending to weep. Her whisper carried farther than she meant it to. "She'll be out of that house by the end of the month. Trust me. Trust me." Those were the same words she'd used when convincing Henry to let her help with the family finances. The same words that turned our family dinners into business meetings. The same words that built a wall between my son and me. My son, Daniel, once used to hold my hand at funerals. Back when we attended them together for neighbors. Not for his father. Today he wouldn't even look at me. He stood tall beside Pamela, the picture of a dutiful husband. But I saw his jaw tighten. He'd heard her whisper too. He just chose not to react. When the choir began to sing Amazing Grace, I finally sat down, my body trembling not from grief, but from clarity. For the first time, I wasn't just mourning my husband. I was mourning the illusion of family. I looked up at the stained glass once more. The light had shifted, casting Pamela's face in gold. It would have been beautiful, if not for the shadow cutting across her mouth. Like a warning. Henry once told me, "Evil often dresses in elegance." He was right. She was radiant. And beneath that radiance was rot. I didn't cry. I didn't move. I just whispered back, barely louder than breath, "You shouldn't have said that here." Pamela didn't hear me. Or maybe she did, and simply didn't care. Either way, her laughter during the closing hymn was the sound that buried my heart deeper than the coffin ever could. When the service ended, people began to leave. A flurry of black coats, perfume, and murmured condolences. I stayed until the church emptied, watching the last candle die out. The silence that followed was pure, almost peaceful. And in that silence, I knew Henry's will wasn't just a document. It was justice waiting for its cue. The house felt bigger when I came back from the church. Too big for one widow. Too small for all the memories. I hung my black coat by the door and listened. No organ music now. Only the hum of the refrigerator and the soft complaint of the old floor by the hallway. I set the white envelope on the kitchen table. Henry's lawyer had pressed it into my hand that morning. His voice low, his eyes careful. "Read it when you're ready," he'd said. I wasn't ready. But I didn't have to be. Justice doesn't ask for permission, it waits. I made tea like I always do, 2 teaspoons of honey. 1 slice of lemon. The spoon chimed against the cup. Bright and lonely. On the counter, the casserole dishes from neighbors sat in a row like condolence soldiers. Green bean, baked ziti, potato salad. Grief speaks in starch and foil. From the window over the sink, I could see Henry's rose bushes. They looked unbothered by death. The red ones he trimmed in April were already reaching over the fence. Shameless in their bloom. He used to say roses were stubborn. Like you, he'd tease, and I'd pretend to be offended. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "If you need help arranging the sale of the house. I have a buyer ready. Pamela's friend, Mark." I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. They were fast. Quicker than the lilies could wilt. I turned the phone face down and walked to Henry's study. The door still stuck halfway, like it always did when the air was humid. Inside, his scent lingered, the paper, the cedar, the clean note of the cologne he wore only on Sundays. The desk lamp was off, but the chair sat slightly back, the way he left it the night he paid the last electricity bill. He'd lined up his pens, blue to black, as if order could convince time to behave. I touched the back of his chair and let my hand rest there. "When does love end?" I whispered to a room that would not answer. "Not at the last breath. Not at the last hymn. Maybe love doesn't end. Maybe it settles into the quiet and teaches you how to breathe there." I took the envelope back to the kitchen and sat under the clock Henry hung without a level. It always tilted a little to the left. So do I lately. There are different kinds of silence. The kind you choose. The kind that's put on you. The kind you place gently on a plate and serve to a woman who called you old lady in a church. I chose the last one. Pamela had always been efficient. Efficient at planning gatherings where I stood on the edge of photographs. Efficient at managing Daniel's calendar until there was no room for Sunday dinner. Efficient at crying, too. A single tear, a trembling lip. A glance that begged the room to adore her. I used to wonder if I was unkind to notice. Today, I let myself notice. The tea cooled. I didn't drink it. I wrote a list instead. On the back of a grocery receipt. Call Father James, thank him. Send flowers to the oncology nurses. Henry would want that. Ask Martin, the lawyer, about the next steps. Move Henry's watch into the top drawer so I stop catching my breath when I see it. Water the roses. I added a 6th item. 6. Change the front door code. When Daniel was 12, he carved our initials into the maple tree out back, D+E+H. He told me families were forever. And I believed him the way children believe summer won't end. Standing at the sink, I tried to remember the last time he came over alone. Before Pamela, he would stop by to fix a cabinet, to drink a cup of coffee, to tell me about a case that made him proud. After Pamela, he texted first. "Is this a good time? She's got a lot going on right now." Eventually, I learned that the right time was never when I needed him. The doorknob clicked. I didn't jump, I knew that click. Daniel stepped inside, his suit jacket over his arm, his tie loose. Behind him, Pamela's perfume arrived before her voice. "Mum," Daniel said, giving me the kind of half-hug you give a person you're afraid to break. Pamela kissed the air beside my cheek. "We didn't want you to be alone," she said, already scanning the counters, the corners, the envelope. "I'm fine," I said. Pamela reached for the kettle. "Let me make you fresh tea. You must be exhausted. Funerals take so much out of you." She said it like a line she'd practiced while curling her hair. Daniel sat, his eyes landing on the envelope. "What's that?" "Notes," I said. "A truth small enough to fit in a thimble. We should talk about the house. Pamela said, pouring water, not waiting for my answer. There's a market right now. It would be smart. Financially, you don't need all this space. A condo with an elevator would be, what's the word, easier? The word is erasure, I thought. But easier would do for now. Not today, I said. My voice came out softer than I intended. Pamela's smile showed patience like teeth. I totally understand, she said, tapping her manicured nail against the porcelain cup. Maybe tomorrow. Then, we have a friend who can list it quickly. We? I asked. The room seemed to tilt left like the clock. Daniel and I want what's best for you, she said. For everyone, Daniel added, looking at the salt shaker as if it owed him money. What's best for me, I said, is time. Pamela glanced at Daniel, a quick, sharp look that I recognized from the moments before she won arguments. She softened her voice. Of course, but there are bills, property taxes, maintenance. We're just trying to be practical. Practical. People use that word when they want to give cruelty a respectable coat. I'll manage, I said. She sipped her tea and set the cup down exactly in the circle Henry's mug had made 100 mornings before. Fate is made of small insults. We also talked about, Daniel began, then stopped. He rubbed his thumb against the inside of his ring like a man scouring tarnish from a promise. Pamela finished for him. Care options, a really nice facility near the lake. Activities, 24/7 staff. You'd have friends your own age. You wouldn't be rattling around here alone. I thought of the lilies at the church. How they made a sacred place smell like a department store pretending to be a garden. I thought of Henry, who once said home is where your name sits in the air even after you leave the room. I looked at Pamela and said, I am not a vase to be moved where I look nice. Daniel's jaw tightened. Pam, he warned. It's fine, she said, with a laugh that missed the landing. We're brainstorming, nothing decided. I pushed the envelope a little farther from the edge. Nothing is decided, I said. Pamela stood up, restless. She drifted into Henry's study and came back with a framed photo of our first car. The one we bought when Daniel was born. A memory museum, she said, smiling at me like a realtor rehearsing a pitch. We could sell most of this and keep the highlights. Digitize the rest. Less clutter, more peace. More nothing, I thought. Peace shouldn't echo. Daniel checked his watch. We should let Mum rest, he said. Then to me, I'll come by tomorrow. We can look at finances. Make a plan. I nodded because sometimes nodding is the only way to survive a conversation. He hugged me again, the same careful hug, and left. Pamela followed, then leaned back in for one last thought. You know we love you, she said, eyes sliding to the envelope one more time. We just want what's best. When the door closed, the house exhaled. I sat for a long time, listening to the clock tilt its way toward evening. I opened the envelope an inch. Inside, a single line in Henry's handwriting waited like a hand under mine. Evie, trust the light. It will show their faces. Beneath it, the formal pages. I didn't read them. Not yet. I wasn't hiding from the truth. I was saving it. Some things need darkness to ripen. At dusk, I walked out to the rose bushes with the watering can. The soil gave way under my shoes, soft as a sigh. I pruned one branch the way Henry taught me, at an angle. Just above the node. Let it heal clean, he'd say. I hadn't understood how a cut could be an act of care until now. A car slowed in front of the house. Pamela's friend, maybe. Maybe a curious neighbor. Maybe no one at all. They didn't stop. I went back inside and locked the door. I washed Henry's mug and set it upside down to dry. I turned the clock a fraction to the right. It tilted back on its own, stubborn as grief. I smiled. Before bed, I texted Father James and the oncology nurses. Then Martin, the lawyer. Thank you for today, I wrote. Tomorrow is fine for paperwork. He replied almost instantly, of course. Evelyn, I'm here when you're ready. I put my phone face down and let the dark be dark. The house was quiet, but not empty. Henry's absence had a weight. And strangely, it steadied me. In the hallway mirror, I hardly recognized the woman in black with the straight spine and the tired eyes. Old lady, they called me. Perhaps I am old enough to know the difference between power and noise. Old enough to wait. I turned off the last light and went to our bedroom. On the nightstand, Henry's glasses still lay where he left them the morning he forgot he would need them again. I touched the frame with one finger and whispered, "Tomorrow." The house listened. I slept. And somewhere between midnight and morning, I knew. They would come for the house. The things, the decisions. They would come politely, with forms and smiles. I would be ready. Not with shouting. Not with pleading. With paper. With ink. With the line Henry wrote in his own hand, steady even at the end. Justice was not loud. It was patient. And it had my name on it. Morning came quiet, like a secret trying not to wake me. The house smelled of coffee and lemon polish. I hadn't slept much, but my mind was sharp, sharper than it had been in months. Henry always said grief was a kind of mirror. It shows you who's still standing beside you and who's already walked away. That morning, I learned he was right again. A soft knock at the door startled me. When I opened it, Pamela stood there, dressed in beige and pretending it was compassion. Daniel lingered behind her, phone in hand, eyes elsewhere. "Morning, Mum," she said, voice sugar on glass. "We thought we'd check in. Maybe have breakfast together?" I stepped aside, motioned them in. The kitchen was already set, 1 cup for me. 2 untouched mugs I'd placed out of habit. Pamela smiled at the sight like she'd found proof I was lonely. "I made muffins," she said, placing a container on the counter. "They're from the new organic place downtown. Less sugar, better for, well, you know." She didn't finish the sentence. But I did, silently, better for old people. Daniel sat, clearing his throat. "Mum, we wanted to talk about Dad's estate," he said. He couldn't look me in the eyes. Pamela touched his hand like a cue, then turned to me. "We just want to make sure everything's handled properly. You shouldn't have to deal with all the paperwork alone." Paperwork. That's what they called Henry's life. I poured coffee for each of them. The spoon clinked against the cups. And for a second, I imagined Henry's laugh in the sound. Pamela's perfume filled the air, something floral and expensive, designed to smell like youth. "You don't have to worry," I said. "Henry took care of everything." She tilted her head, pretending curiosity. "Of course, still, if you want help, Daniel and I can review the documents with you. It's easy to miss details." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. I recognized the look, the same one she wore when she convinced Henry to let her manage the family investments. I reached for the envelope still lying near the fruit bowl. Their eyes followed it like cats following a laser. I tapped it lightly. "This will be handled by Mr. Graham, our lawyer," I said. "I'll meet him later this week." Pamela's lips twitched. "That's wonderful. We can come with you. Make sure you're not overwhelmed." "I won't be," I said. Her smile froze, then melted into something polite. Daniel changed the subject. "Mum, about the house. We were thinking, if you want, we could start moving a few things. It's hard to go through it alone." "I'm not going through anything," I replied. The pause that followed was long enough for a whole truth to fit inside it. Pamela broke it with a practiced sigh. "Evie, I know this is hard. But we can't just leave things hanging. The longer it takes, the harder it becomes to transition." Transition. Such a pretty word for eviction. I looked at her, at the way her diamond earrings caught the light. She liked shining in other people's morning. "You're right," I said softly. "Some things shouldn't be left hanging." She smiled, mistaking agreement for surrender. I let her. After they left, I cleaned the table. Their coffee cups were still half full, rings of cream floating like little halos gone wrong. I poured them down the sink and watched the swirl fade. Outside, the mail truck pulled away. In the stack by the door, one envelope stood out, thick, embossed, from Graham and Sons Law. I opened it with careful fingers. Inside was a short note in Martin's handwriting. "Meeting confirmed for Friday. Bring no one. Henry's file contains private instructions." Private instructions. The words felt like a whisper from beyond the grave. I folded the note back neatly and placed it under the clock. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about Henry's study. There was one drawer he'd always kept locked. He used to joke that it held his bad handwriting. After his death, I hadn't touched it, maybe out of respect, maybe out of fear. Now, it felt like time to look. I found the small brass key in his coat pocket, still hanging in the closet. When the lock clicked open, the drawer gave off a faint scent of cedar and dust. Inside, a few old photos, a folded newspaper, and a small leather notebook. On the first page, his neat, square handwriting. If you're reading this, Evie, it means Pamela has already started talking. I froze. The next line. Don't argue, don't show anger, let her believe you're fragile. People who think you're weak forget to hide their hands. I sat down hard, the notebook trembling in my lap. He'd known. Henry had known exactly what would happen. He'd prepared for it, for her, for this moment. My eyes stung, but I didn't cry. Instead, I flipped the page and found a small business card taped there. Attorney Martin Graham, confidential addendum, will revision 2023. Beneath it, one more note in Henry's voice, still steady even in ink. They will come for what's mine. Let them. They'll find it changes hands only through kindness, something she's never learned. I closed the notebook, pressed it against my chest. The clock in the kitchen ticked like a heartbeat. Later that evening, Daniel called. Mum, are you okay? Pamela said you seemed distant. I'm fine, I said. Just sorting through Dad's things. Good, he said quickly. Pam thinks we should start listing the house next month. She's talking to a realtor tomorrow. She's efficient, I said. He chuckled awkwardly. Yeah, that's Pam. There was silence. Then he said, you know she means well, right? I didn't answer. I just listened to the static, the unspoken apology inside it. Then I said, tell her I said thank you for the muffins. It was the kind of sentence that sounds polite but ends conversations. He got the message. We hung up. I went back to the notebook. The last page held something unexpected, a pressed rose petal, brittle but intact. Below it, a single line, she thinks she buried me, but I left roots. That night, I set the notebook beside Henry's photo. I didn't sleep much, but I didn't feel afraid either. The next morning, Pamela returned. No Daniel this time. Just her, in heels too loud for my porch. She smiled through the screen door. Morning, Evelyn, I brought croissants. We need to go over a few quick forms, just signatures. Nothing stressful. I didn't open the door right away. Instead, I looked at her through the mesh. She looked perfect, curated, composed. Behind her eyes, impatience flickered. Come in, I said finally. She stepped inside like she owned the air. I printed the documents for your convenience, she said, laying them out on the table. Stacked neatly, highlighted in yellow. Estate adjustment, home valuation, medical power of attorney. Her words blurred into a hum. I looked at the papers, every line legal, every line hungry. Why don't we wait for Martin? I said. Oh, these are just drafts, she replied quickly. He'll finalize them later. I just need your initial approval so we can expedite. I interrupted, gently. You seem to know a lot about legal processes. She smiled, a tight little curve. Comes with experience. Daniel and I just want to protect you. Protect. That word again. Like a fence around a house they plan to sell. I signed nothing. She left after half an hour, frustrated but too proud to show it. As she drove away, I watched her car disappear beyond the rose bushes. The engine roared like defiance. But even from here, I could see one petal fall, caught in her rear tire. Henry used to say roses always leave a mark on those who mishandle them. I went back inside, made tea, and opened the notebook once more. This time, I wrote my own line beneath his. Justice doesn't need noise, it just needs patience, and proof. Then I placed the notebook in my purse. Friday wasn't far. The will would speak soon. And when it did, Pamela's whisper at the funeral would finally echo back where it belonged. That night, sleep wouldn't come. The house held too many ghosts. And not all of them were kind. I turned on the bedside lamp and watched the light fall across the photo wall, 40 years of life in frames. Weddings, birthdays, quiet mornings on the porch. And somewhere in between, the slow invasion of a smile that didn't belong there. Pamela had entered our lives like perfume, pleasant at first, then impossible to get rid of. Daniel met her at a charity gala. She was working as an event planner. Good with faces and flattery. I still remember that night. He'd called me, his voice alive again after months of stress. "Mum, I met someone," he'd said. And I foolishly had been grateful. The first dinner she came to our house. She brought a bottle of wine far too expensive for the occasion. Henry teased her gently, "You'll spoil us." She laughed, a sound too polished for warmth. That laugh has never left this house. Back then, I thought she was nervous. Now I know she was taking notes, where we kept the silverware. Which side Henry's chair faced the window. How often we refilled the wine glasses. People like Pamela don't just marry into families. They infiltrate them. She called me, Evelyn, from the start. Not, Mrs. Thompson. I told myself it was modern. Henry said it was a sign she felt comfortable. Maybe that was the first mistake, confusing comfort with conquest. After their wedding, she moved in for a while. The house changed almost overnight. White curtains replaced Henry's old plaid ones. My kitchen, once smelling of coffee and cinnamon, started to smell like vanilla candles and ambition. Every change was, for Daniel's allergies, for a brighter space, for practicality. The word practical has ruined more homes than fire ever could. I still remember the morning I found Henry standing at the sink, staring out the window. He didn't turn when I walked in. "She moved my tools," he said quietly. She said the shed looked cluttered. He smiled, but it was a sad smile, one that didn't touch his eyes. "She's efficient," he added. That word again. I should have known then, efficiency is just control with a polite face. A month later, Pamela convinced Daniel to move into a condo closer to his office. "It's temporary," they said. But temporary stretched into years. Phone calls turned into texts. Visits turned into holidays, and even those became optional. Henry never blamed Daniel. "He's building his life," he'd say. But I could see it in his eyes when he watered the roses, the quiet ache of being replaced by convenience. One Christmas, Daniel forgot to call. Henry and I opened gifts alone, a scarf for me, socks for him. Pamela sent a message at midnight, "Merry Christmas from Cabo. Hope you two are staying warm." Attached was a photo, the ocean, her tan, their champagne. Henry's hand tightened around his mug until the handle cracked. He didn't say a word. He wasn't a man of anger. Henry. He believed time corrected all cruelties. I used to believe that too. Years passed, and Pamela's presence grew like ivy, elegant, but choking. She handled Daniel's emails, filtered his calls, even spoke to our accountant to simplify things. I once overheard her telling a friend, "Daniel's parents have wealth, but not taste. I'm just trying to balance it out." She laughed after saying it, that same polished laugh. I stood in the hallway, holding a tray of lemon bars, and for the first time, I understood what bitterness tasted like. The last summer before Henry fell ill, he asked me to sit with him on the porch. He looked older, but still strong, that quiet, steady kind of strength that men born in the 1940s carry like a coat. "She's after security," he said. "She doesn't love Daniel, she loves what he inherits." I tried to calm him. "Maybe she's changed." He smiled, soft but certain. "People like her don't change. They just get better at pretending." That conversation replayed in my head now, like a warning too late to heed. I set the photo frame back on the table. Pamela's face in it, her arm looped through Daniel's, her smile aimed at the camera, her eyes just slightly away from him. She was already looking toward something bigger, something with a dollar sign. I got up and walked to Henry's study again. The notebook still lay on the desk, the rose petal marking the last page. I opened to the beginning this time, to see if there was more I'd missed. There was. A section dated 6 months before he died. Pamela met with our insurance agent today while I was in treatment. She said Daniel couldn't make it, so she came instead. She asked questions about early access to funds. When I walked in, she looked startled, then smiled. I told her I'd handle it myself. That was the last time she visited me at the clinic. I closed my eyes. Every memory was a puzzle piece, and suddenly they all fit. Her kindness, her offers to help, her constant talk about planning ahead. It wasn't care. It was strategy. I turned another page. Henry had drawn a small star beside a sentence. If she pressures you, don't fight, let her tighten the rope herself. His faith in calmness was infuriating, and yet, it worked. She was tightening it already. Thunder rolled outside, soft and distant. The kind that announces rain without apology. I went to the window and watched the storm build over the neighborhood. The roses swayed but didn't break. Pamela once said she hated storms, they messed up her hair. I smiled at the thought. My phone lit up again. A message from an unknown number. This is Mark. Pamela said you'd be signing tomorrow. I can come by to take the keys. The keys. To my house. I stared at the text until the letters felt like insects crawling on my skin. Then I typed one word back, no. I blocked the number. After that, I turned off the lights and sat in the living room. Henry's chair across from mine. Empty but somehow not. The envelope on the table. The clock ticking left. Always left. My reflection in the window looked calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that scared even me. I whispered to the dark. She thinks she's winning. The dark didn't answer. But somewhere outside, thunder replied. When the rain finally came, I didn't close the window. The scent of wet roses filled the room. Rich and wild. It smelled like something cleansing. Like truth sharpening its blade. Tomorrow was Thursday. One more night before the lawyers' meeting. One more night for Pamela to believe she'd already won. I folded Henry's notebook, tucked it into my purse, and whispered. Let her play her part. Henry, I'll play mine. Then I blew out the candle beside his photo. The smoke curled upward, soft and gray. A ghost waving goodbye. Or maybe just signaling the beginning. Friday arrived gray and quiet. The kind of morning that carries its own warning. I dressed in the same black dress I'd worn to the funeral. Pressed flat and clean. No makeup. No perfume. Just the silver locket Henry gave me on our 25th anniversary, the one with our wedding photo folded inside. I locked the house, paused on the porch. The air smelled like wet earth and roses. And somewhere behind me, a single petal floated down, landing on the step. I didn't pick it up. Some things are better left resting. Martin's office was downtown, a small brick building wedged between a bakery and a flower shop. The kind of place people pass every day without really seeing. It suited Henry, quiet, unassuming, practical in a way that wasn't cruel. When I walked in, Martin was already standing. He was a man in his 50s. Tidy, patient, the sort of person who treats grief like something sacred. Mrs. Thompson, he said gently, I'm sorry we have to meet under these circumstances. I nodded. I think Henry planned this meeting more than either of us realized. I said. He smiled slightly. Your husband was a very thorough man. He gestured to the chair across from him. And I sat. On the desk were two folders, one labeled will, official. The other addendum, private. He placed his hand on the second one. This is what he asked me to read to you alone. I took a breath. Then let's begin. He unfolded the letter, and the sound of paper filled the room, the kind of sound that makes you feel like something irreversible is about to happen. Martin began reading. To my wife, Evelyn, if this reaches you, it means Pamela has shown her true colors. And Daniel has chosen silence over courage. Do not judge him, fear is a powerful thing. This letter contains the truth I could not say aloud. He paused, glancing at me. I nodded for him to continue. Last spring, I changed my will. Pamela and Daniel believe they are entitled to everything, the house, the accounts, the investments, but they are not. I've arranged for the assets to transfer to you solely. With one condition, the addendum must remain sealed until they ask for it. They must reveal themselves first. Only then should justice speak. My hands trembled slightly, but not from surprise, from recognition. Henry's calm had always been deliberate. Even in death, he was still setting the table, arranging the final course. Martin continued. When they do, give them this copy. It includes a clause that revokes their inheritance in the event of verbal or emotional cruelty toward you, documented by 2 witnesses or recorded at a family gathering. Pamela's words at my funeral qualify. He looked up at me. She was heard by several people. Mrs. Thompson, I have their statements already. I stared at him, stunned. You have witnesses? He nodded. Henry asked me to attend the funeral myself. I recorded part of the service for legal verification. She spoke near the entrance, it was clear enough. I let out a slow breath. That's exactly what he meant by the clause that would turn her smile to fear. Martin folded the papers neatly. He thought you might say that. I sat back, the weight of it settling over me. Henry had built this moment brick by brick, in silence, with precision. Martin handed me a smaller envelope. This is for Daniel, he said. Your husband wrote it himself. By hand. I looked down at the name scrawled across it. Daniel. Just his name, no, son. No, my boy. Just the man he'd become. I'll deliver it when it's time, I said quietly. Martin nodded. There's one more thing. He handed me a key, small, brass, with a tag that read Box 217 Westfield Bank. Henry left instructions for this to be opened only by you. After today's meeting, I don't know what's inside. I turned the key in my palm, feeling its cool weight. It wasn't fear I felt. It was closure, shaped like metal. When the meeting ended, I thanked Martin and stepped outside. The sky had cleared, the kind of sudden brightness that feels like a message. Across the street, the bakery smelled of sugar and cinnamon. For a brief second, I almost felt normal. Then my phone rang. Pamela's name. I answered. Evelyn. Her voice was sharp with fake cheer. We've been trying to reach you. Daniel's worried sick. Where are you? I had errands, I said simply. Well, we need to talk about the lawyer. Daniel said Dad's attorney reached out to him, something about a meeting? I could almost hear the impatience under her tone, the fear beginning to crack her polish. I don't know, I lied softly. Maybe you should call him back. There was a pause, the kind that grows teeth. Evelyn, she said, voice low now, we're family. You don't need to hide anything from us. I smiled to myself. I'm not hiding, I said, I'm remembering. Before she could respond, I hung up. The sound of the call ending was the sweetest silence I'd heard all week. I drove to Westfield Bank. The clerk led me to a small private room and handed me the box. Inside were 3 things. Henry's wedding ring. A flash drive labeled funeral, raw audio. And a handwritten note that said, let him talk first. I didn't need to listen to the recording yet. I already knew what it held, her voice. Sharp as glass, slicing through the hymn. Still, I plugged the drive into my phone, just to hear it once. The recording was faint, but clear enough. Speed up the inheritance, I'm sending the old lady to a nursing home. Then a laugh. Not loud. Just confident. Ugly in its ease. I stopped the playback and sat in the stillness of the room. The echo of her words hung like smoke. It wasn't rage I felt. It was gratitude, to Henry, to time, to silence. Before leaving the bank, I sealed the flash drive back in the envelope. Evidence didn't need revenge. It only needed patience. When I returned home, the house felt different. Not empty, lighter, maybe. I placed the key and the documents in Henry's desk drawer, then made tea. I drank it slowly, watching the steam curl upward. The phone buzzed again, this time a message from Daniel. Mum, Pam says you're avoiding us. Can we come by tomorrow? We just want to clear things up. I typed back, tomorrow afternoon is fine. He replied instantly, love you, Mum. And for the first time in weeks, I believed that maybe he still did, in his own quiet, frightened way. That night, I stood by the window and watched the streetlights flicker. The roses outside were heavy with rain, their petals sagging, beautiful even in exhaustion. Henry used to say, when a storm passes, don't rush to clean, let the world breathe first. So I did. I let it breathe. Pamela thought tomorrow would be her victory. She'd come smiling, certain, ready to finalize the paperwork she'd forged in her mind. But tomorrow wasn't her stage anymore. It was Henry's, and mine. I placed his ring beside my teacup. Whispered, "Sleep well, my love. The play ends tomorrow." Then I turned off the lights. The house, for the first time since the funeral, felt like it was on my side. The next afternoon, I set the table for 3. Teacups, napkins, lemon slices, small things that still mattered. Henry used to say a clean table was half a conversation. He wasn't wrong. When people sit at a table that looks cared for, they forget who's really in control. At exactly 2 o'clock, their car pulled up. The sound of tires on gravel felt louder than usual. Pamela came first, perfume thick as sugar, voice already too bright. Daniel followed, slower, shoulders heavy with something he didn't want to name. "Mum," he said, smiling like a man trying to stop a storm with good manners. "Hi, Evelyn." Pamela's cheer could have cracked glass. She held a folder against her chest. Business disguised as family. I opened the door wider. "Come in." The house smelled of tea and rain. I'd kept the window slightly open, the roses outside swayed in the breeze. Pamela wrinkled her nose. "Still keeping it chilly, huh? Daniel hates the cold. He used to love it," I said. Her laugh trailed off. We sat. The air was polite, the kind of politeness that breaks if you breathe too hard. Pamela placed her folder on the table. "I know you met with the lawyer yesterday," she began. "That's wonderful. It'll make everything easier." "Easier," I repeated softly. Daniel shifted in his seat. Pamela went on. "So, we drafted a few things for efficiency. Just signatures, really, confirmation that the house title can be transferred to a trust. You'll still live here, of course. It's just practical." That word again. Practical. The anthem of the greedy. I looked at the folder. "Where did you get these forms?" She smiled, eyes wide with innocence. "Oh, online, the same site Dad used for his early paperwork." I reached for the papers, flipping one open. Each line was neat, official looking, full of words that pretended to protect. At the bottom, my name, printed but not signed. Beside it, Daniel Thompson, executor. And under that, Pamela Thompson, authorized party. I closed the folder carefully. "Did Martin see these?" Her smile faltered for half a second. "He doesn't need to. We're just saving time." Daniel finally spoke. "Mum, Pam's only trying to help. You shouldn't have to deal with legal stuff alone." "I'm not alone," I said. They didn't understand what I meant. That was fine. Pamela leaned forward, voice softening into the tone she used when she wanted something. "Evelyn, you know we love you. We just want to make sure you're comfortable. You've been through so much." I studied her hands, perfect nails. No tremor. Confidence without conscience. She'd rehearsed this moment. "Would you like some tea?" I asked. She blinked, thrown off by the question. "Oh, sure." I stood, poured tea into each cup, and added honey the way Henry used to. The silence stretched like thread. When I set her cup down, I said, "I met with Martin yesterday. He spoke very highly of Henry's planning." Pamela looked up sharply. "Oh, what did he say?" "That Henry was thorough." Her fingers tightened around the cup handle. Daniel watched me now, a flicker of worry behind his eyes. "Pamela," I said softly, "what did you whisper at the funeral?" The air froze. Even the clock seemed to stop ticking. She forced a laugh. "Excuse me?" "You remember," I said. "Near the entrance, just before the hymns began." Her face paled, the way truth drains color from a liar. "I have no idea what you're talking about." Daniel looked from her to me. "Mum." I raised a hand gently. "It's all right, Daniel, she remembers. Maybe she just didn't know others heard her too." Pamela's voice sharpened. "This is ridiculous. I was comforting people, not." I opened the folder she'd brought and slid it back toward her. "Your handwriting is very neat," I said. Henry appreciated that in a person. He used to say neat handwriting can't hide dirty intent for long. Daniel frowned. What's going on? I reached into my purse, placed a small flash drive on the table. This, I said quietly, is from Henry's lawyer. A recording from the funeral. Pamela's jaw tightened. Daniel looked confused. What recording? Evidence, I said. Of her words, of how she spoke about me, and about you. Pamela stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. This is insane. You're twisting things. Henry's gone. He can't defend what he meant in that will. Daniel froze. What do you mean, defend what he meant? She realized too late what she'd said. The room went very still. I leaned back, voice calm. You've already read the will, haven't you? Her silence was the answer. I see, I said. Well, then you know there's an addendum, a clause about cruelty. Pamela tried to laugh again, but it cracked. Clauses, recordings, addendums, you're just trying to hold on to what's gone. No, I said. I'm holding on to what was earned. Daniel's voice broke the quiet. Pam, did you? He stopped, unable to finish. She turned on him, desperate. She's manipulating you. This is what she does. She twists people. I looked at my son, at the man I'd raised, now caught between fear and truth. Daniel, I said gently, your father loved you. He forgave easily. But he also saw clearly. He left this house to protect what's right, not what's easy. He stared at the table, at his reflection in the tea. Pamela paced, her heels striking the tile like thunder. Finally, she stopped and hissed. You think this changes anything? We can contest it. We can. You can try, I said, my tone even. But you'll lose. There were witnesses. Pamela, people heard you. The law heard you. Henry made sure of that. For the first time since I'd known her, Pamela had no words. She sank back into her chair, breathing hard. Her polish cracked, the flawless wife replaced by the real woman beneath, angry. Cornered, small. Daniel finally spoke, his voice quiet. Pam, did you really say that? About Mum? She didn't answer. And in her silence, he found his answer anyway. He stood. I need some air. He walked outside, leaving the door half open. The wind rushed in, cool, honest, clean. Pamela turned to me, eyes sharp again. You won't win, she whispered. You're old, tired, alone. People like me always survive. I smiled, slow and tired but true. You're right, I said. People like you always survive, until the truth arrives. I stood, gathering the folder, the flash drive, and her untouched cup of tea. You should go. She hesitated, then grabbed her purse and stormed out, heels biting the floor with every step. Through the window, I watched her catch up to Daniel on the driveway. They spoke fast, hands moving, faces turned away from each other. The argument was silent through the glass, but I didn't need to hear it. I'd already heard everything that mattered. When their car pulled away, I sat back down. The tea had gone cold. I sipped it anyway. Cold tea tells the truth better than warm comfort. I looked around the house, the same walls, same clock, same silence. But it felt different now. The storm had finally shifted. I whispered toward Henry's picture on the mantel. They came for everything, love, and left with nothing but themselves. The clock ticked, steady again. Outside, the roses swayed under the afternoon sun. Unbothered, unbroken, blooming just the same. When the sound of their car finally faded, the house fell into a silence that felt alive. Not the kind that hurts, the kind that listens. The kind Henry used to fill with his humming when he worked on the porch. I sat for a long time, staring at the empty cups. 3. One cold, one untouched, one steady in my hand. It felt like proof of who stayed calm, who ran, and who still stood. Outside, the air smelled of rain again. The sky couldn't decide whether to clear or cry. Neither could I. I collected the papers Pamela had brought, the fake trust forms. The pretense of generosity. I placed them neatly in a brown envelope and wrote across the front. For Martin, evidence. Then I folded Henry's note. The one that said, "Let 'em talk first." I smiled. "They've talked plenty now," I whispered. In the living room, Henry's photo caught a sliver of sunlight. He looked as he always had, calm, decent, a man who never raised his voice but always made people listen. I ran my finger along the frame. "Your plan worked, Henry," I said softly. "Now it's my turn to finish it." The doorbell rang. I almost laughed. The universe has a taste for timing. When I opened the door, it was Father James, the priest from the funeral. He held a small paper bag and a look of gentle concern. "Mrs. Thompson," he said. I was nearby and thought I'd check in. He handed me the bag. "From the church ladies, lemon pound cake." "Thank you, Father," I said. "Come in, please." He looked around as he stepped inside. The faint scent of tea still lingered. His eyes paused on the extra chair at the table, pulled slightly away. "Rough visit?" he asked quietly. "You could say that," I said. "Storms aren't always made of thunder." He smiled. "That they aren't." I poured him tea, out of habit more than hospitality. He sat, folded his hands. "You know, Henry came to me a few months before he passed," he said. "He wanted to talk about forgiveness." "Forgiveness?" I echoed. "Yes," he said. "He worried you might have to forgive someone after he was gone. He didn't say who, just that you should forgive. But never forget." I let that settle. He always knew more than he said. Father James nodded. "That's what faith looks like in practice, quiet preparation." We talked a while about Henry, about the weather, about the roses that refused to die. When he left, he patted my hand and said, "Justice has its own rhythm, Evelyn, sometimes it dances slow." After he left, I sat again at the table. The rhythm had already begun. That evening, Martin called. "Mrs. Thompson," he said, "I've received your note and the forms Pamela gave you. I'm forwarding them to our legal department. We'll prepare a response." "Thank you, Martin. There's also something you should know," he added. "Pamela called me this morning. She tried to request a copy of the will." "Did she?" I asked, though I already knew. "She said you were confused. That she needed to handle matters on your behalf." I told her that wasn't possible. I smiled into the receiver. "I appreciate that." "She wasn't pleased," he said. "She'll likely escalate, but she's already crossed a line. Legally and morally, Henry's clause stands." "I know," I said. "And I'm not afraid." "You shouldn't be," he said. "Your husband built this protection carefully. And you, Mrs. Thompson, are holding it exactly the way he hoped, with grace." After the call ended, I went to the porch. The evening light had turned the street gold. Children played 2 houses down, their laughter drifting through the air. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like a ghost in my own life. I closed my eyes and listened, not to the noise outside, but to the steadier sound inside me. Peace, maybe. Or the absence of fear. They sound the same, if you're lucky. When the sun slipped low, I went back inside and opened the notebook one more time. There were a few blank pages left at the end. I picked up a pen and began to write. Not to Henry this time, but to myself. Today, they showed me who they are. I stayed quiet. I stayed kind. That was enough. I paused, then added. Tomorrow, they'll try to fix what they broke. They'll learn some things can't be brought back. I closed the notebook and placed it beside his photo. A soft knock startled me again. When I opened the door this time, it was Daniel. Alone. He looked tired, not angry, not defensive, just tired. "Can I come in?" he asked. Of course. He stood in the entryway for a long moment before speaking. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "For everything, for not stopping her, for believing her." The apology was quiet, but it was real. It landed somewhere deep. "I know," I said. He looked at me, surprised. "You knew I'd come?" "I knew you'd remember who you are," I said. "You just needed to hear the truth yourself." He sat at the table where the cup still rested. He glanced at him and whispered. "She said you were manipulating Dad's memory. I wanted to believe she was wrong. But when you showed that recording, I saw her face. And I knew." His hands shook slightly. She said terrible things about you. Mum. I didn't flinch. I've heard worse. I've survived worse. He nodded, tears threatening but not falling. She's packing her things. I don't know what happens next. You let her go, I said softly. That's what happens next. He nodded again, slower this time, like a man learning to breathe differently. We talked for a while, about Henry. About small memories that still made us smile. Then he stood to leave. Do you hate me, Mum? He asked at the door. No, I said. I love you enough to let you face what you chose. He looked down. I'll try to do better. I know you will. When he left, the silence returned, but this time it was gentle. Not empty, earned. I went to Henry's chair by the window. The one he used to sit in every Sunday with his newspaper. I sat there now, letting the house breathe around me. The sky outside was violet and calm. For the first time, I felt that calm belonged to me. I whispered into the quiet. They broke peace once. I rebuilt it. The clock ticked. The roses outside glowed faintly under the porch light. I thought of all the women like me, widows, mothers, the ones who outlived betrayal. We don't shout. We don't scheme. We endure, until the world catches up to what we already know. I closed my eyes and said softly, tomorrow, justice will speak, and I won't need to raise my voice. The night didn't answer. It didn't have to. It was already on my side. By Monday morning, the neighborhood already knew. News travels faster than forgiveness. It started with a phone call from Marjorie, the woman who walks her golden retriever past my gate every morning. Evelyn, she said, voice full of gossip she didn't mean to carry. I heard the most shocking thing. Is it true, that your daughter-in-law was cut out of Henry's will? I didn't confirm it. I didn't deny it. I suppose people always hear what they're meant to. I said, and thanked her for calling. By noon, the grocery clerk looked at me differently. By evening, even the mailman was polite again. He hadn't been since Pamela moved Daniel out of the house years ago. I didn't like attention, but this wasn't really about me. It was about truth finding its own voice. That same afternoon, Martin called again. She's furious, he said. She's already contacted another attorney. But the recording, well, that ends the argument before it starts. Good, I said. She'll tire herself out soon enough. He hesitated. Would you like me to file a restraining order, just in case? No, I said softly. She doesn't need punishment, she needs distance. He chuckled. Henry was right about you. Calm where others would shout. After the call, I sat on the porch. The air was crisp, the kind of autumn air that tastes faintly of smoke and apples. The roses were losing petals now, red scattered against the grass like quiet confetti. I picked one up, pressed it flat between my fingers, and thought, everything beautiful ends honestly. Daniel came by that evening. No Pamela this time. He looked better, not good, just lighter, as if he'd finally stopped rehearsing someone else's lines. I moved into a motel. He said. She's angry. She says you ruined us. She ruined herself, I said, not unkindly. Henry just gave her a mirror. He nodded slowly. I read Dad's letter. How did it make you feel? Small, he admitted. But seen. He didn't hate me, he just wanted me to be better. That's all parents ever want. He looked at the house. The windows glowing behind me. It feels different here now. It's breathing again, I said. So am I. He smiled, and for the first time in years, it reached his eyes. Before leaving, he asked, what will you do now? Live, I said simply. That's enough revenge for anyone. The next day, my phone rang again. A journalist this time, polite but eager. Mrs. Thompson, I'm writing a piece about elder financial abuse. I heard your story might be relevant. I almost laughed. My story, I said, isn't about abuse, it's about underestimating the wrong woman. She didn't know how to respond. I didn't help her. Some stories don't need retelling, they just need time to echo. After that, I stopped answering unknown numbers. Peace doesn't like to share a line. I filled my days with small things. Cleaning Henry's study. rearranging books in order of the years we bought them, cooking meals for one, but setting 2 plates anyway. Habit is a form of memory, and I wasn't ready to forget. Sometimes, at dusk, I'd walk to the garden. Neighbors would wave from across the street, sympathy wrapped in curiosity. They meant well. But I preferred the company of the roses. They don't ask for explanations. They just bloom, then fall, and start again. Pamela's name still floated through the town like perfume that lingers after the person is gone. Someone told me she'd tried to sell her jewelry to pay for legal fees. Someone else said she'd left for her sister's house in Ohio. I didn't ask for confirmation. Gossip, like karma, doesn't need encouragement. One evening, I found a letter slipped under my door. The handwriting was messy, Daniel's. Inside was a note. Mum, she's gone. I'm sorry it took this for me to see her clearly. Thank you for not giving up on me. I love you, D. I held that letter for a long time before setting it beside Henry's on the mantel. 2 men, one gone, one returned. Maybe that's how healing works, not fast, not loud, but steady. A week later, I met Martin at the lawyer's office again. He smiled as I walked in. Everything's settled, he said. The estate is secure, and Pamela's claim has been officially dismissed. You're free of her, legally and otherwise. Free, I repeated. It felt strange on my tongue. Like a word I'd forgotten how to use. He handed me another envelope. This is from Henry's account. His final note to you. I hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a check, not large, but generous, and a small card with just one line written in Henry's handwriting. For the garden, let it grow wild this time. My throat tightened. I nodded, unable to speak. Martin said quietly. He really did love you more than anything. I know, I whispered. He just had to prove it twice, once to me, once to the world. When I got home, I went straight to the backyard. The soil was still damp from last night's rain. I dug my fingers into it, feeling the cool grit under my nails. Grief is a lot like dirt, it stains. But it also grows things if you let it. I planted new roses beside the old ones, yellow this time. Henry always said yellow was the color of grace. As the sun dipped low, I looked at the house. The lights inside glowed warm, not lonely. The clock on the wall ticked straight again. Finally balanced after years of leaning left. I thought of Pamela, wherever she was now. And felt no anger. Only a quiet certainty. She would never understand that some battles are won not by fighting, but by standing still long enough for the truth to show itself. The breeze picked up. A single yellow petal broke loose, spiraling down into the soil. I smiled. Henry's words echoed in my mind. Justice doesn't shout, Evie, it waits. And that night, under the hum of crickets and the soft ticking of the house, I knew the waiting was over. It's been 3 weeks since the storm broke. The house feels different now, not quieter, but cleaner, as if the air itself finally stopped holding its breath. I wake up before sunrise these days, just to watch the light stretch across the kitchen floor. Henry used to say morning light forgives everything. Maybe that's why I leave the curtains open now. The garden has started blooming again. The new yellow roses stand tall beside the old red ones, stubborn and radiant. Every time I water them, I think of Henry's last note, let it grow wild this time. So I do. I let the vines climb where they want. There's beauty in letting go of control. I'm learning. Daniel visits often now. Not every day, but enough. He brings groceries, sometimes dinner, always a look in his eyes that says, I'm trying. He doesn't talk about Pamela anymore. Neither do I. Some names lose their weight when they're no longer spoken. Last week he came by with a small box. Inside was Henry's old wristwatch. The one Pamela had taken, for safekeeping, years ago. She left it behind, Daniel said quietly. I thought you should have it. I traced my finger along the cracked leather strap. It still smelled faintly of cedar and tobacco, Henry's scent. Thank you, I said. He smiled, and for once, he didn't look like a boy trying to fix something. He just looked like my son again. We sat on the porch drinking coffee. He stared out at the roses and said, I didn't realize how much Dad prepared for everything. He even protected you after life happened. I finished. He nodded. I wish I'd noticed sooner. Noticing late is still noticing, I told him. Some people never do. He chuckled softly, eyes wet but proud. You always find a way to make things sound better. It's not better, I said. It's just true. When he left that evening, I found myself smiling without effort. The kind of smile that doesn't need an audience. A few days later, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Pamela. No return address, just my name written too neatly on the front. For a long time, I didn't open it. I left it on the mantel beside Henry's photo, where her words couldn't reach me. But that night, curiosity, or closure, got the better of me. Inside was a single page. Her handwriting was sharp, angry, but trembling around the edges. Evelyn. I hope you're happy. You took everything. Daniel's gone, the house is gone, and everyone treats me like I'm poison. You've won. I hope it was worth it. I folded the letter, calm as rain. There was no signature. No apology either. But I didn't need one. Some people mistake peace for victory. They never understand that real victory is silence. I burned the letter in the sink, one corner at a time. The smoke curled upward, soft and grey, not hateful. Just done. Henry would have liked that ending. That weekend, I went to church for the first time since the funeral. Father James greeted me with that same kind smile. It's good to see you here again, he said. It's good to feel like coming, I replied. During the service, I sat in the same pew where Henry and I used to sit. The sunlight through the stained glass still painted the walls in colors he loved. But this time, I didn't cry. I just listened, to the choir, to the breathing of people still learning how to love and lose at the same time. When the service ended, Father James walked me out. He said, sometimes God waits until we stop shouting before he speaks. I smiled. Then he must be talking a lot lately. He laughed softly. Maybe he's using your story to teach others about patience. Or about boundaries, I said. Those are holy too. That evening, I set a small dinner for two again, out of habit. Not hope. Roast chicken, green beans, Henry's favorite cornbread. I poured a glass of wine and set it opposite mine, by his photo. I know he's gone, but I still talk to him like he's just in another room. I think you'd be proud of Daniel, I said. He's learning, so am I. The wind rattled the window a little, like an answer. I raised my glass. To second chances, I whispered. Later that night, I sat by the window, notebook in my lap. The last pages were almost full now. I wrote. Peace doesn't arrive all at once. It comes in small, ordinary things. The sound of dishes drying. The smell of roses. The quiet between phone calls. It's not what I expected. It's better. I closed the notebook and set it beside Henry's ring. The moonlight spilled across the table, pale and soft. Outside, the garden swayed, yellow and red roses side by side. No longer separate, just alive. Sometimes I think about Pamela, wherever she is now. I don't wish her harm. I just hope she learns that money can't buy peace. And cruelty never ages well. Life has a way of teaching those lessons, one silence at a time. I've stopped keeping the doors locked during the day. The house isn't a fortress anymore. It's just home again, the way Henry built it. The way I've rebuilt it. And every morning when I wake, I whisper the same thing before stepping into the light. I survived the funeral. I survived the whispers. And I'm still here, blooming. It's strange how life keeps moving even after you think it's over. The seasons don't pause for grief. They don't wait for you to be ready. They just turn. The calendar says it's been 4 months since the funeral. But time doesn't measure healing by months. It measures it by mornings. And I've had enough of them now to know I'm still alive. The house no longer feels like a monument to loss. It breathes again. Sometimes I catch myself humming while doing dishes, a tune Henry used to hum when he fixed the porch light. I don't even realize I'm doing it until I stop and smile. Daniel still visits on Sundays. He brings a small bouquet every time, not store-bought, but picked from his own backyard. Roses, he says, because I finally understand why Dad loved them. He helps me in the garden, cuts away dead stems, and laughs when I fuss over the new ones. We don't talk about the past anymore. We don't need to. Forgiveness doesn't always need a conversation. Sometimes, it's just two people tending the same soil again. Last week, the neighborhood held a community brunch, something I hadn't joined in years. When I arrived, people smiled warmly. A few women pulled me aside, whispering things like, "You were so brave," and "I can't believe what that girl tried to do." I smiled, but I didn't correct them. Bravery isn't what it looks like from the outside. It's not loud. It's not polished. It's just showing up when you'd rather disappear. I sat at the long table under the oak tree. The air was full of cinnamon and chatter. Someone played an old country song on the radio, the same one Henry used to sing off-key while mowing the lawn. For a moment, I closed my eyes and could almost hear him again, singing just a little behind the beat. When I opened them, Daniel was talking with one of the younger men about repairing the community fence. He looked comfortable. Solid. Like the kind of man Henry always believed he could be. And I realized then that this ordinary peace, was the ending Henry had wanted for us. Not justice shouted from rooftops, but a simple life that didn't need defending anymore. That evening, I sat on the porch watching the sunset bleed into the horizon. The sky looked like melted copper, rich, forgiving. A breeze moved through the roses, carrying their scent across the yard. I thought about Pamela again, though not in anger. Someone told me she'd moved out of state, maybe remarried, maybe not. I didn't check. Her story wasn't mine anymore. If I've learned anything, it's that peace isn't the absence of people who hurt you. It's the quiet understanding that they no longer have power to do so. I used to think I'd never stop hearing her voice from that day at the funeral. But lately, it's faded. Now when I think of that day, I don't hear the cruelty. I hear the hymn that played right after. Amazing Grace. Maybe that's what forgiveness sounds like when it finally arrives. I've started writing letters again. Not to send, just to remember. Letters to Henry, to Daniel, even to myself. In one of them I wrote, "You didn't lose everything, Evelyn. You just shed what wasn't love. What's left is truer, quieter, and yours." It felt good to see those words on paper. Proof that I survived the storm and came out softer, not smaller. Sometimes, when I walk past Henry's study, I still expect to hear his chair creak. Or his voice calling out, "Evie, bring me another cup of coffee." But instead, I hear my own footsteps, steady, unafraid. And that's enough. This morning, I noticed something new in the garden. A single rose had climbed higher than the fence, reaching toward the neighbor's yard, as if it refused to recognize boundaries anymore. It made me laugh. Henry would have said, "That's you, Evie, never staying where people expect you to." Maybe he's right. Maybe we all outgrow our fences eventually. The mailbox still fills with bills and flyers. Life doesn't stop being ordinary just because you've lived through something extraordinary. But even ordinary feels sacred now. Folding laundry. Feeding the cat that started sleeping on my porch. Hearing Daniel's car pull into the driveway on Sundays. Peace has a sound. And it's not silence. It's soft laughter over coffee. It's the click of pruning shears. It's the creak of a rocking chair that doesn't mind being old. Tonight, before bed, I lit the last candle Henry had bought. Lavender, his favorite. As the flame steadied, I whispered, "You kept your promise, love, you brought me back home." The room glowed warm and golden. On the mantel, his photo caught the light. And for just a heartbeat, I could swear he smiled. I closed my eyes and said the words that have become my prayer lately. May the ones who betrayed me find peace. May the ones who stayed find joy. And may I never forget that even endings can bloom. Then I blew out the candle. The smoke curled upward, soft and silver. Like a story finished. Like love that never needed witnesses. Outside, the garden swayed beneath the moon. The yellow and red roses leaning into each other. Two colors, one root. And somewhere in that quiet night, I finally understood. I didn't just survive. I became. The first frost came early this year. I woke to a world silver and still. The garden dressed in quiet light. Even the roses bowed their heads, not in defeat, but in grace. Winter used to make me lonely. The silence, the long nights, the empty side of the bed. But this time, it felt different. The house wasn't echoing anymore. It was breathing, slow, warm, content. I put on Henry's old sweater, the one that still smelled faintly of cedar and thyme. And made coffee just the way he liked it, too strong. Not enough sugar. It's funny how we keep the habits of those we've loved. As if honoring them one small ritual at a time could keep them close. Outside, the air bit cold but gentle. Daniel had come by yesterday to cover the garden with burlap, tucking the roses in like children before bed. He left a note on the counter. "Mum, don't forget to rest. Love you." It made me smile. Once upon a time, I had to remind him to eat. Now he was reminding me to live. Around noon, I walked to the mailbox. It's a small thing, really, that quiet walk down the path Henry built with his own hands. But every step felt like a memory. The creak of the gate. The crunch of frost under my shoes. The world doesn't forget easily, it just learns to soften the edges of remembering. There were 2 letters. One was from the church, a holiday invitation for widows' supper next week. The other was from a return address I hadn't seen in years, Pamela Collins. I stood there for a long moment, the cold biting through my gloves. I could have thrown it away. But life has taught me that closure rarely arrives in envelopes. And yet, sometimes, we need to open them anyway. Inside was a short letter. Handwritten. Sincere, or maybe just tired. Evelyn. I owe you more than I can say. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I left Daniel alone because he deserves peace. I've started therapy. I'm working again. I won't bother you. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Pamela. I read it twice. Not because I doubted it, but because my heart needed a moment to decide what to feel. I placed it on the table beside Henry's photo and whispered. Well, she finally learned how to speak softly. Then I brewed another pot of coffee and poured 2 cups, one for me, one for him. Henry, I said quietly, the world keeps surprising me. I could almost hear him laugh. It always does, Evie, that's how you know you're still in it. That afternoon, I went into town. Stopped by the small craft shop to buy candles for the holidays. The owner, a kind young woman named Lucy, smiled when she saw me. Your story inspired me, she said. I read about it in the local paper. My mother said every woman should hear it. I didn't know what to say. I never wanted to be a story. But maybe some stories are meant to remind people they're not alone. Lucy handed me a candle shaped like a rose. On the house, she said. For new beginnings. I thanked her, though words felt too small. Walking home, the street lights flickered on, painting the snow gold. Every window I passed showed families gathered, laughter spilling through curtains. I used to ache at that sight. Now I just felt warm. Because even though my family looks different now, it's still here, just changed. Not gone. That night, Daniel called. Mum, he said, I'm thinking of visiting Dad's grave this weekend. Would you come? I hesitated for a breath, not because I didn't want to, but because I wanted to be sure I was ready. Yes, I said finally. It's time. Saturday came, clear and cold. The cemetery was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels respectful. We brought fresh roses, red and yellow mixed together. Daniel placed them down and said nothing for a long while. Then he whispered, I hope he's proud of me. He is, I said. He's proud of both of us. We stood there side by side, the wind tugging gently at our coats. I didn't cry. Grief had changed shape, it wasn't sharp anymore. It had become something like gratitude. As we walked back to the car, Daniel said, I'm thinking of starting a foundation in Dad's name. Something small, for families dealing with financial abuse. I looked at him, surprised but deeply moved. That's a good thing, Daniel, he'd like that. He smiled faintly. I learned it from you. When I got home, the house greeted me like an old friend. I lit Lucy's candle, the rose-shaped one, and placed it by the window. Its light flickered softly against the glass, casting small shadows that looked almost like petals in motion. I sat in Henry's chair, notebook in my lap again, and wrote. Forgiveness doesn't erase what happened. It just stops it from owning your tomorrow. Today, my tomorrow feels mine again. I looked out at the garden, now sleeping under winter's quiet hand. I whispered to it. Rest well, my loves, you've earned your spring. Then I closed the notebook, set it beside Henry's ring, and leaned back, listening to the hum of the heater and the ticking of the clock. Life, steady and kind. Nothing dramatic. Nothing missing. Just enough. The kind of enough people spend years chasing. And somehow, after everything, it had finally found me. Spring came quietly, almost shy. The last of the snow melted from the garden path, revealing small shoots of green that had been waiting under the frost all winter. It always amazes me, how life finds a way, even after the coldest season. Maybe that's what Henry meant when he said, nothing truly loved ever dies, it just rests until you're ready to see it again. I'm ready now. Every morning, I take my coffee to the porch and watch the world wake up. Birds dart between the trees. The neighbor's dog barks at shadows. And from the corner of the yard, the yellow and red roses, Henry's and mine, bloom side by side. Stronger than before. Daniel still visits, but not because he feels guilty anymore. He comes because he wants to. Sometimes we sit in silence, sometimes we laugh until our coffee goes cold. He talks about his new job at the local community center, helping families manage their finances. Teaching him how to spot manipulation before it happens. He doesn't say it, but I know he's doing it for Henry. And maybe a little for himself. A few days ago, he brought his daughter, my granddaughter, Emily. She's 7, all freckles and curiosity. She ran straight to the garden and shouted, "Grandma, why do you have 2 colors of roses?" I smiled. Because one was your grandpa's favorite, and one is mine. She nodded thoughtfully, then asked, "Which one wins?" "Neither," I said. "They just grow together." She grinned and went back to playing. And I realized, she'll never know the bitterness that once filled this house. All she'll know is that it bloomed again. And that's enough. That night, after they left, I sat in Henry's chair again. The house felt warm, not because of the fire, but because of something quieter. It felt whole. I opened the notebook, the same one I'd been writing in since the funeral. There were only a few blank pages left now. The first page still carried Henry's handwriting. "If she pressures you, don't fight, let her tighten the rope herself." The last one would be mine. I wrote, "You were right, Henry. She did tighten it. But the rope didn't break me. It taught me how to stand taller." Then I added one more line, the one I'd been waiting to write. "The woman they tried to silence found her voice, and it whispered peace." I closed the notebook gently and placed it beside his photo. The candle I'd been saving flickered on the mantel, its light painting soft gold across the room. For a long time, I just sat there, listening to the creak of the floorboards, the hum of the house that had outlived the lies. Every wall seemed to breathe again. Not haunted, but grateful. As the night deepened, I went out to the porch one last time. The air was cool, the kind that wakes you without shaking you. Above me, the stars spread wide and endless. The same ones Henry used to count when we were young. Back when the world felt simpler. Before grief, before betrayal, before all the lessons we didn't ask for but needed anyway. I whispered to the sky. Thank you. Not for what I lost, but for what I learned. That love isn't a promise of forever. It's a choice, one you make again every day, even after the world forgets to be kind. The porch light flickered once, then steadied. I smiled. Good night, Henry, I said softly. Good night, my love. I turned to go inside, but before I closed the door, I looked back at the roses, glowing pale under the moonlight, leaning toward each other like they were sharing secrets. And I realized something simple, something true. I didn't just survive them. I outlasted the worst of them. And in doing so, I became someone my younger self would have admired. That's the real inheritance Henry left me. Not money, not property, but dignity, resilience, and a garden that never stops blooming. I stepped inside, turned off the light, and let the night hold the rest.